Well, let's take a break on the Rise News, and it's time for the press preview. First look at this day on sister publication. Let's tell you that the headline says U.S. cuts off Russia's central bank from dollar transactions with about 6 riders, warns Americans and Russia to leave immediately. FG to begin airlifting Nigerians trapped in Ukraine on Wednesday. Switzerland to freeze Putin other assets. Russia faces financial meltdown. Ruble crashes as penalties bite its economy. And of course, UEFA ban Russia. Ukraine calls for immediate ceasefire as talks with Russia open. Just beneath that, beneath the headlines, you see climate change. Nearly half of humanity living in danger zones, says UN Secretary General Guterres. At the top mast of the paper, resilient Zenith Bank beats market expectations with double-digit growth in gross earnings in 2021. You can find that on page 10, and just below the logo of this, the logo of this day. And MPC divesting IOCs from Nigeria's upstream sector must address issues of abandonment, decommissioning of oil assets.
Now, what to expect when you pick up the Nation's newspaper this morning. Worsening petrol scarcity cripples cities, businesses. Lagos, Abuja, Ibadan, Osogbo worst hit. More headlines on the Nation's newspaper. Row in APC over convention panel. State chairmen are protesting while PDP men on withdrawn list. The NNPC is saying what the IOCs must do before divesting from Nigeria. And a leading photo here on the front of the Nation's newspaper is the Osun State Governor Boyega Oyetola driving on the newly constructed flyover in Osogbo. Above the nameplate of the Nation this morning, INEC OKs 18 parties for 2023 elections with no more registrations. Also, Russia-Ukraine war, evacuation of Nigerians to begin tomorrow.
The Punch newspaper, federal government to airlift 2,000 Nigerians evacuation begins Wednesday. President Buhari approves funding as the government tips Air Peace and Max Air. Fuel scarcity, Nati blames subsidy. Ex-depot price hits 180 naira per litre. Minister walks out on students protesting ASU strike. That's on page 27. And Nigeria's 993 billion naira imports from Russia at risk over war.
Well, we'll continue with the papers. Let's look at Guardian. The headline says hurdles as Nigerian companies take over IOC's onshore assets. And just on top of that headline news, we have fourth Ekiti monarch escapes kidnapping, death by whiskers. Sunny Bank Post, we've talked about it earlier on in this day. Because poverty must be dealt with for Africa to grow. This is by Yemi Osinbajo, the Vice President. And then that tragic Abba Kyari case, you can find this on the editorial page 12. The Osinbajo story is on page 3. And the fourth Ekiti monarch escapes kidnapping is on page 5. And then, of course, just below the picture you're seeing there with Abba Kyari and the rest, sorry, not Abba Kyari, sorry, Mele Kyari and the rest. Evacuation of Nigerians in Ukraine begins tomorrow. You get that on page 2. This is The Guardian.
Some international papers this morning. Guardian UK, leading with Russia, says Russia's deadly raids defy sanctions and peace talks. Also, FIFA and UEFA ban Russian teams from all competitions. Meanwhile, the IPCC delivers bleakest warning yet on climate.
The Independent now. Allies fear Putin will turn to indiscriminate attacks. Dozens killed in Kharkiv after suspected use of cluster bombs.
And the Times, this is international. Barbaric strikes on Ukraine with a rider. Children among the dead as cities bombarded. Actually, 3 riders. Peace talks failed to reach resolution. Of course, they're continuing with the talks after the first round of talks between Ukraine and Russia. Then the third rider. Sanctions push Russian economy into crisis. And just below that, show this to Putin, says medic trying to save a girl in that I don't know what is the picture right there, but that doesn't look like a girl to me. Anyway, show this to Putin. That's it on the Times.
Well, for the press preview, let's bring in Emmanuel Bello, who joins us now from our outside studio. Emmanuel, good morning. Good to have you. Thanks for joining us. Let's take a look at this day newspaper and the global news of all the sanctions being imposed on Russia following the invasion of Ukraine on the 6th day of that invasion. But President Putin is not stopping now. They're implementing even more desperate moves to take over some of the cities in Ukraine. He's even retaliating, banning airlines from 36 countries. Emmanuel, what are your thoughts?
Well, happy new month, Nkechi. Yeah, it's not so happy news, and these sanctions probably are not even biting. That's because I think Putin has his own reserve, and then with that support from China and some other countries that are beginning to show him even some support. It's like, well, he's trying to weather out all these sanctions, even when his currency, the ruble, is actually turning into just that, a ruble. This stiffening and these sanctions don't seem to be biting. But one thing you can say about them is that they are really far and wide in their impact. You have it in sports, you have it in entertainment, you have it in transport, you have it just about any sector of the economy. Those sanctions are there, but the latest, which is cutting off those dollar transactions, is designed to hurt. Sadly, to hurt Russians, and of course to put the brakes on Putin. I think the debate now will be whether these sanctions are really working. Voices are divided about this. Some people saying that, look, the only language Putin understands, it's the language of force, and that these sanctions, he could caution that or weather them out, or just live through them. And then in any case, some people say Putin don't really care about what happened to the Russian people. This is about him now. This is grudge match. He doesn't want to be embarrassed, doesn't want to be disgraced. So it's the rest of the world against one man's ego, and that's why he's doing this. He's not even talking about the sanctions at all, rather thinking of what to do. So if we're up against a megalomaniac and someone that has a sense of history, who think he has a vision, to restore the great Soviet empire, then it's gone to another level. This is not a rational thinking being anymore. This is someone that wants to just exact enough damages as much as he can. And so those who are imposing sanctions and trying to stop him must probably start thinking outside the box to look at ways to do this. And the rest of the world is watching and waiting. And while those talks too are a bit comical, because it's like two people fighting and then talking at the same time. That's what's going on. Nobody is too sure whether those talks are going to actually yield any kind of a resolution, with this paper actually saying that, and most newspapers also reporting that yesterday talks were deadlocked already. And so these sanctions, we need to watch to see how they are biting, but they are very effective in the way they've been deployed. When you cut off the source of funding, especially the funds that Putin was actually hoping to use to prosecute this, maybe that would make some sense. If you cannot fuel those tanks, if you cannot feed your soldiers, if you cannot really support them, well, it's strategic. It means you cannot prosecute a war. That's the direction the U.S. is going, and the rest of the Western world, ready to stop Putin in his track. What we need to fact check and also focus on is whether these sanctions are really biting or working.
Emmanuel, speaking of sanctions, the front of the Punch newspaper says the federal government is to airlift 2,000 Nigerians and the evacuation begins tomorrow. But the focus for me is that on page 20, which says Nigeria's over 900 billion imports from Russia at risk over war. Nigeria is an ally of the United States. And speaking of sanctions, we know the position of the Foreign Affairs Ministry here, and we've heard their words. What about their actions? Imports over the past 12 months into Nigeria, according to the Bureau of Statistics, is about over 900 billion. We're importing durum, wheat, herrings, mackerel. What action is Nigeria taking to show its disapproval of the invasion of Ukraine?
Well, yeah, that has to be looked into seriously, because I mean we need to join the rest of the global push to on these sanctions, and of course our bid to show not only to ensure that the lives of our people are safe and they're brought home, as the Nigerian government is planning, saying tomorrow is the deadline, using APs, using masks, talking with these airlines to see how Nigerians could be evacuated. An aspect of that story is that I saw, which is painful, is that racism has even is in the mix right now, with Nigerian students saying that because they're blacks, they are not allowed, because they're Africans, they are not actually allowed to leave Ukraine, and they're not allowed to join those buses and those trains that take people out, and that's already racism. And they were told point blank that this is for white people, and they could see white people escaping. So, well, it's up to the leadership out here to be able to do something about those evacuations, and the foreign affairs minister is already saying tomorrow is D-Day, and they will look for ways of evacuating Nigerians. So all the other things, our bilateral relationship with Russia and the effort that we're making to safeguard investments and the rest, must feed into the global narrative of of putting those sanctions in place and helping to push Putin out of Ukraine, or at least stop his march into a democracy and a sovereignty.
All right, Emmanuel, well, the Times says the sanctions push Russian economy into crisis. I mean, talking about when you said it's not biting, well, that the Times doesn't seem to see it that way. But I want to talk sports. Poland started the squeeze first. They said, we're not playing Russia. And then now UEFA has placed a total ban on sports. Nothing happening in sports with Russia. What's your sense?
Well, it's like I said, it's a total attack on Russia. The world is united. Apart from countries coming together to know what to do, they want to see how much pain they can exact on Russia. So if sports is very central to most Russia. I think the entire aim is to annoy or to really put the screw on, especially Russians, ordinary Russians on the streets. If you touch sports, for instance, that could have those kind of effects, with citizens going to the street. And we've seen those riots already in Moscow. People saying that, look, you are going to cut us off. Students worried about their scholarship abroad. Even individuals who have links, other beyond politics, who are just ordinary people, especially young people who need to reconnect with the rest of the world. So making Russia a pariah nation is part of the global push to isolate Russia and actually make the people turn against Putin and say, look, you are turning us away. I mean, sports is one area that if you touch, especially sport lovers, that would be a very, very serious an area to touch. So you can understand what's happening in that sector, and it's everywhere. With some U.S. state even banning what we consume some people, which is Russian beverages like vodka and Smirnoff. So it's total. Everyone trying to do something that will send home the message that, look, you are increasingly getting isolated from the rest of the world, and sports is one way to show that push. I guess this is where the import of sports, especially as it relates to the issue of this global push to isolate Russia, to make it a pariah nation, to tell Putin that, look, we are not with you, the rest of the world is against you. And so you are reminded of that song. It's a Tupac song that say, me against the world. So it's Putin now against the rest of the world, and everybody is pulling in the brakes to see what they can do to isolate him, to make him a pariah, and actually turn his people against him.
Definitely, Manu, and no matter how much we'd like to say that some of those sanctions seem symbolic, they definitely send a powerful message. Now, quickly, the nation's newspaper is reporting worsening petrol scarcity. It is the 1st of March. Emmanuel, we've been talking about this since the end of January when we got that report of the adulterated petrol that was circulating in the nation. Promises of this petrol scarcity ending by the end of February, during the weekend. So many promises, but it's March and this fuel scarcity seems to be going nowhere.
Nkechi is going nowhere. And then for me, the emotion that a lot of Nigerians are beginning to feel now, you go from rage, you go from disappointment. And I think as I look at, I was coming to work today and I look at so many people, it's actually a look of despondency, a certain kind of feeling that no one cares. People don't know what to say. We were told one thing, and now something else is happening. We were told that in a matter of weekends, this was going to be over. We're in March, and we've marched right into the problems again. So you get this feeling that nobody is saying anything, no one cares. NNPC keep telling you that, well, they pull out the adulterated fuel. You begin to ask, where did they even take them to in the first place? Were they thrown somewhere at sea, or what happened to those fuels? People still saying that, look, some of these fuel that they're buying are adulterated. I think NNPC need to look into that. And but yes, the confusion generally, it's a black market situation. All of us are there now, queuing up and buying. So you go from outrage, you go from total despondency, sometimes almost surrender, and you begin to think that, look, there's nothing anyone can do about it. As it is this morning, the situations persist, and now we're beginning to hear that the Russian-Ukraine crisis has something to do with it. Even in those countries where you have those crises, interestingly, like someone said, in Ukraine, you still have lights. People still have access to electricity. People have access to fueling in those countries where you even have those crises. But out here, a crisis that is just beginning, they are saying that that's also part of the problem. So it's confusion all through in Nkechi, and I don't know. Somebody needs to answer. Somebody needs to give some kind of answer to what's going on, and stop the embarrassing, disgraceful, almost attack on the Nigerian people that cannot even. It's almost like an invasion on its own, if you ask me. And nobody knows what to do about it. And I think this should end this week as we head into the weekends.
We hope so. We pray so.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel.